Welcome back to another episode of the Iron Purpose Podcast. I'm so excited for the guests that I have today. I have Chaz and Kris Mua of Storm Training Group. I had the pleasure of having a training with you guys a couple weeks ago. It was down in the Twin Cities area. Myself and one of my coworkers went down there and learned how to be an instructor in use of force slash defensive tactics within a jail setting. And you guys had a lot of experience, a lot of knowledge, and a lot of good stuff to bring to the class. And so I was like, I gotta get you guys on the podcast. And we had a chat about it while I was there, and just afterwards, just kind of following with you guys and following the page and everything. It's been more evident. That's I think it's gonna be a really cool conversation to kind of hear your guys' stories and to kind of what brought you into the career that you have and into what you're doing right now. But I guess. Thank you guys for taking the time to come on. What's been going on recently?
Thanks, Bailey, for having us.
Yeah, thank you, Bailey. Just really busy. A lot of trainings. It's been awesome. You did really well in the class. We were great to connect with you. We were really grateful for that.
Yeah, that was such a fun time. I was looking back on your guys' Instagram and saw the picture. I hadn't seen it yet, and I got to see the picture of everybody there, and just what an awesome group. And I we're probably getting a little ahead of ourselves, but I really appreciated the open discussions that you guys allowed during the class time, because a lot of times you go to a training and it's a lot of death by PowerPoint stuff, but you guys kind of had a question. You're like, okay, what do you guys do in your facilities, and go, and had us just talk. And I learned so much valuable information from different people there and got their contact information. So it was such an awesome way of learning in the way you guys did that. So it was such a fun group, fun time. And I commented on the post. I'm already ready for round two, ready to get back in there with you guys. But what does your schedule look like with those trainings? Does it keep you busy? Like, is there something kind of every week? And how far do you go for those?
It's kind of wherever the training takes us. The majority of the work is obviously located in the Midwest, mostly Minnesota. So we spend a vast majority of time doing that. Kris and I have a lot of other responsibilities apart from the training as well. But as we expand, we're starting to travel a lot more nationally and sometimes internationally. We're going to be doing a lot of that this year. So we're looking to bring the things that have made Storm successful and fun to other agencies across the country.
Mm-hmm. Kris, when you'd started with Storm, was this something that you thought was going to be, on the radar as far as internationally training other departments and other people, what you guys have been coming up with?
For sure. Like, you knew that there was a big gap in training in law enforcement, corrections, and security. Everybody trains differently, but there was such a big gap of like what actually works out on the streets. And so working with Tom and Chad definitely opened up my eyes to be like, all right, we're definitely going to be going cross country doing this cool stuff. And so I knew, that was one of the reasons why I jumped on and left my safe and secure police job, because I was just like, no, man, this thing's going to take off way bigger than I can ever expect. And so made that jump.
Yeah, you guys are experienced in law enforcement, and it was something that is, near and dear to your heart, being that you got to see it firsthand and being out there. So being able to give back in this way has to be fairly fulfilling, and a lot of purpose put into this. Do you kind of feel that as you're training these people, does it kind of take you back and thinking, man, I wish I would have known this, or I wish I would have been taught this, earlier on in my career, may have helped other people out? Is that something that kind of crossed your mind?
Yeah, I think everything that you said, Bailey, is spot on. And I think as I started to be exposed more to just this wonderful culture and training that's been built through Storm, through the collective effort of so many people, how necessary and critical like this type of training and this type of culture has been. And certainly when I went through the police academy, or even when I went through the skills program, we weren't doing training like this by any means. And things were very different in terms of how officers like experienced training and viewed training. One of the things that just stands out to me, particularly in that regard, is people were very hesitant to train outside of their defensive tactics mandated hours that they had. And I don't necessarily think the reason is that people don't enjoy doing something like that. I think that a culture in law enforcement has been built around making training maybe not a super fun or really inviting experience for a lot of officers. And I feel like one of the special things about what we've done in Storm is we've been able to kind of pass on our love for Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, for combat sports, for law enforcement, and for each other. And we've been able to pass that on to the people that we train. And they, in turn, are able to carry that sort of culture and mentality back to their agencies. And we're seeing a lot more officers fall in love with training and fall in love with Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and really seeing the value in it. And like, think about it. If you're going to get good at something, you have to be passionate about it and care about it and love what you're doing. If it's something that you don't care for and you're not passionate about it and you don't have that ignition to get better, it's going to be difficult to become an expert in that field or even devote any time to progressing in your own kind of personal journey. Right. And so I feel like we've been able to kind of share our passion with people, and it's infectious, and I'm super grateful for that.
It definitely is. As a witness, as somebody who experienced that compassion that you guys shared, it really does. It makes you exciting. It makes you excited. There was a time where I was assaulted in a jail setting, and I got punched, and I was kind of like, it was a tough time, and it was like, man, I'm kind of nervous to go in an interaction with somebody now. I kind of have this little bit of anxiety dealing with these critical incidences where somebody's starting to act out. It's like, oh shoot, okay, here we go. I might have to go hands on with this person, and I don't want to say now I'm seeking it or I'm inviting it, but after the training with you guys, it almost gives like this boost of confidence. Like, okay, what move can I use now that I know how to do this? I feel more confident in this. Like, it's almost like it's a little bit exciting, and not even because I want to get into a fight with somebody, but it's because now I'm really comfortable with the situation and the skills that I have, being able to practice that. And I think it's important, especially, I know you touched on it, as instructors, to be passionate about what you're doing, because if you don't believe in it, or if you don't believe in yourself, how is anybody else supposed to believe in it in your agency? You have people coming in, and there's a quote that I saw, I think it was from a previous instructor, but people come into these trainings, like you said, they're not always fun. They're kind of like, oh, here we go again. I'm on my day off trying to, I got to be here with these guys. And they're kind of coming into it like maybe 30% effort. And a quote that I heard is like, why would you go into something 30% when you know that on the other end of it is somebody that's trying to take your life or come after you at their 100%. So when you can get people passionate about it and excited to learn about use of force and jiu-jitsu and mixed martial arts, not only is it a fun thing to do, to burn off some steam and just kind of be excited about with some fellow guys, but it also gives you that confidence to be able to say, if I'm at work or even not, if I'm out, I'm going to the grocery store with my family, my son, my wife, and somebody tries to do something, I can have some confidence in knowing that I can protect them and stand up for them. Is that, I know you guys do stuff with law enforcement, corrections. Is there anything that Storm is doing to kind of branch up to the people that aren't involved in law enforcement for more like personal protection classes, or is that not really on the radar at this time?
Yeah, we've done multiple classes, and we actually have some scheduled this year. We've worked with multiple security, like private security agencies, multiple hospitals. My wife actually, before she started staying home, she was running the security team at Maple Grove Hospital, and she actually had gone through the Storm Foundation instructor course and brought the curriculum back to Maple Grove Hospital to train their security officers on. So it's present in a multitude of colleges, a multitude of civilian security positions and things like that. As for like a personal defensive tactics thing, we don't do anything like that, but I would encourage people to join their local jiu-jitsu gym or MMA gym and train on their own. It's a very valuable skill set.
Mm-hmm. In your guys' experience, would you say jiu-jitsu is kind of the foundation for what you do, or for mixed martial arts? I don't know your history or your involvement in all mixed martial arts, but you're very heavily involved in jiu-jitsu. Would you say that's kind of the go-to, or one you would recommend for people to get involved in?
Yeah, I think it's all the fights start standing up, but if you go down the YouTube rabbit hole, every fight ends up on the ground. And so just having a knowledge of like, hey, if this goes on the ground, I know how to defend myself. And more than anything, if anything, jujitsu is really like, as I've gotten more into martial arts and just like fight culture and things like that, I don't want to fight anybody uh, because you know the real consequences to an actual fight. And so you actually, in my opinion, you start to develop this thing where you're just like, I don't want to get in a fight. And you actually become a more peaceful person. You're less confrontational. I don't have to prove myself to anybody. I don't have this big ego. I just walk away. There's been several times where people, uh, start to puff up their chest, and you just walk away. It's not a big deal because you know the consequences of an actual fight. And so if anything, uh, you get into more less altercations as you're getting better at the martial art.
Yeah. It's such a great point that Kris brings up. And it's actually kind of something that you just mentioned, Bailey, where you talked about that newfound confidence that you have at work. And I was just talking to a police officer at the gym today about this very thing. One of the things that we've identified that's kind of backwards in law enforcement training, and I wouldn't say these things are like wrong or not good, but I think we've done training almost in reverse. Where on the front end, we load law enforcement training with excellent verbal de-escalation, critical intervention, um, recognizing cues and being able to verbally interact with people. And we put a lot of emphasis on the verbal communication aspect and the demeanor on the very front end. And then we teach all the hands-on skills afterwards. And to Kris's point and your point, we found it's actually more effective to give the hands-on training on the front end and give an officer that level of confidence. And honestly, all the verbal de-escalation skills that are all really, really great, it comes so much easier because a lot of the times it's from a place of fear. And it's from a place of having to prove oneself and maybe even taking things a little personal. If you have the confidence to be able to handle any situation that's thrown at you, if it turns violent, you're a lot more comfortable and calm and patient, like your tone of voice, your mannerisms, your body language, all that stuff aligns with your confidence. And think of what that adds to your ability to communicate with people and de-escalate with people. Like if you're really nervous and really scared and really on edge, like that's going to come out. People are smart and they pick up on those cues. But if you have that confidence on the front end, like it just exudes off of you. So we really like giving those hands-on skills and that confidence on the front end, and all that other stuff can be piled on top of it. And it's so much easier to grasp, and it just complements each other really well.
100%. And then you touched on it. What a more dangerous weapon than composure. Like to be composed in the middle of somebody screaming at you. And it's a good point. And as you were saying that, it's like, yeah, teaching the verbal de-escalation and stuff and what to look for. It's almost like you're like, okay, how long can I prevent this fight from happening? And maybe you do get good rapport with somebody, you're able to talk them down and say, okay, awesome. But as that's not working, I think we've all seen people start to panic and start to go, oh no, well now I might have to go hands on. He's not listening to what I'm saying, and then you get into that cycle of stop, and it's not working, and they don't know what to do at that point because their brain is so scrambled. So what a tool composure can be to just be that calm presence in the middle of that storm. And I think people will then rely on you too. Look for the person who's calm, and you can like direct or do whatever it is depending on what the situation is. But that composure, I'm really coming to learn how key it is, especially in critical instances. And
yeah, for sure. It's just that it adds to your officer presence.
Absolutely. Well, we're kind of dancing around the line of what you guys did previously to Storm. So now I'll kind of just give a chance for you guys to each kind of share a little bit about your story as we do on the episode here, because I love to learn, and I love to learn more about people and learn from people. So Chaz, if you want to just start out, just kind of touch on your story, kind of where you came from and what kind of brought you to where you are today as a man, as a father, as an officer, whatever you want, man.
Yeah, I appreciate the opportunity. I'll try not to be too long-winded. I grew up locally in Minnesota, just north of the Twin Cities. I just grew up like a lot of people in America. Very normal upbringing, wonderful family. I got 4 sisters, mom and dad, fantastic. My dad was actually a police officer for many years, a total of 42 years.
Wow.
And then my grandpa's 3 brothers were all cops. My uncle's a cop. I have like 4 or 5 cousins that are cops. So yeah, the Lemon household is full of law enforcement. I got into like law enforcement, specifically with St. Paul Police at a very young age. Joined the Police Explorers at 14. Continued through the Police Explorer program until I was 19. I became a parking enforcement officer. Once I had graduated school and taken my post test, I became a St. Paul police officer in 2013. Throughout that, I spent the majority of my career on patrol, mostly on the midnight shift, about 9 years on midnights.
Wow.
Working in the Central District, but I also worked some short stints in West and East. Ended up retiring out of the Eastern District June 6th of last year to do Storm full time. When I was at St. Paul, I was on the SWAT team. I was a use of force instructor, which is called a response to resistance and aggression instructor, a firearms instructor, and then I was one of the lead FTOs in the Eastern District. Kind of supervises and helps out with some administrative stuff over the FTO program in that specific district.
Awesome.
Other stuff I did, just history and training martial arts. I started on karate at a very young age. I think I still have a lifetime membership to USA Karate. Maybe I should use that. They were selling lifetime memberships back then. But I did that when I was a kid. Yeah.
Maybe you need that plaque behind you.
Yeah. Lifetime USA Karate. Got it. Yeah. I don't know what belt I was. Yeah. But probably like most kids, my parents put me in karate. I boxed a little bit. My uncle was a boxer, so he brought that to me when I was a teenager. And then I got into some more mixed martial arts and grappling-based martial arts. Started doing combat submission wrestling and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Started out at Warriors Cove was the first school I went to. It was a Gracie-based school in, I think, 2009 when I started doing that. And I've just been training off and on since then.
Awesome. So when you were kind of growing up, I mean, my dad was a police officer as well for about 20 years. And then my grandpa, he was probably closer to 30 years a police officer. So growing up, it's something that I always wanted to do. And then to just kind of found myself in this career yourself, was that kind of similar? You were just around it and that's why you kind of wanted to get into it? Or was there any other driving factors for you that you're like, I feel called to do this. This is what I'm going to do.
Yeah, it's such a great question because I think the standard answer is, right, in an interview, like I want to help people. Right. And that's pretty much what everybody gives. And on some level, right, it's always true when people say that. They have an inclination and a want and a desire to be helpful. I guess if I were to articulate like my reason in more than just I want to help people, I think from my perspective now, especially as a Christian and as I've matured, I saw law enforcement as more than just a career. Scripture teaches that governing authorities are established by God to restrain evil and protect the innocent. And when I look at the job through that lens, it becomes less about a paycheck and more about like stewardship. And it's a serious responsibility to serve your community and maintain order. And so I took that really seriously and I took that really personally. And I wanted to serve in as sacrificial of a manner as I could find. And I see law enforcement as, an incredible profession, right? Like you put your needs aside, whatever kind of day you're having, whatever's going on in your life, you're dropping everything to be there for someone in whatever capacity they need you to be. Maybe it's just to listen, or maybe it's to die for them. It could be one end of the spectrum or the other.
And you appear as a very service-minded man, and we kind of talked a little bit about your faith, and I appreciate you bringing that up. And to my understanding, you kind of found your faith in the middle, like while you were in your career, kind of before it had happened. While you were a police officer, did you kind of see that shift, as you kind of strengthened in your faith, as prior to that time? Did you kind of go, oh wow, this is really not about me anymore, it's about helping these other people? Was there that shift, or were you always just kind of that kind of guy?
Yeah, it's interesting because, like, as I look back now through the lens of a Christian worldview, as a believer, I can see all these things that I didn't understand at the time. And I think I'm just making decisions and I'm just living through my life. But now I can see how God is guiding my steps, and how I'm realizing that He's guiding me through my experiences and challenges and even my failures to prepare me for what He had planned.
Right. That's awesome. Beautiful answer. Thank you for sharing that. It can be a little vulnerable at times, to kind of share your stories and kind of where you come from and what brought you to where you are today. And along the way, you don't know. You think you have the plans all planned out. You think, oh, I'm going to retire. I'm going to do this, and and you find yourself at Storm. What was kind of the turning point for you when you had this? You built this career. I know you got a couple awards, a couple accommodations. Throughout your career, you had a successful career. On the outside looking in, that's what I would call that. What was the transition like from leaving that spot, and like Kris had mentioned, of security, you have a family, and hopping over to Storm? What was that transition like for you?
Yeah, thank you for the question. I mean, I fully expected, like, I was one of those guys that's like, I'm going to work till 65. They're going to have to drag me out. This is the best job ever. And I had my whole life planned out. Started doing stuff part-time with this group of people at Storm, and I fell in love with it. And Chad called me and asked about my interest in joining full-time, and I hadn't really given it that much thought before, but when he called me and asked me, I couldn't really explain it. I was so excited. And kind of an interesting story. I call my wife and I'm like, hey, we have to talk tonight. So, and I'm like, it's not bad. I just tell you something. So
I can just imagine her wheels spinning. Oh, great. Yeah.
So I go home and I tell her, what everything that me and Chad had talked about. And I'm like, hey, they want to bring me on full time, and this is kind of what it would look like logistically. And I'm explaining it all and sharing the vision of the company and what I would be doing and some practical aspects that would be different for us. And she's giving me nothing. She's like the Mona Lisa. I can't, or like a Sphinx. I can't read her. Mm-hmm. And she's just sitting there. And so finally I'm like, honey, are you excited about this? You're not really giving me any feedback. And she started kind of hemming and hawing and proposing some logistical challenges and things like that. And, by the end of this kind of back and forth conversation, I was a little discouraged because I'm like, man, she doesn't seem that into it. And it's like, there's no way with 3 children and the way our family is structured that this is going to be possible if she's not excited about it, because it's an enormous change for our life. And I was like, all right, well, let's pray on it. Like, let's get some sleep. Like, we can talk more tomorrow. I'll get, maybe you feel a little bit differently. And then a few seconds go by and she's like, I was excited. I was pretending like I wasn't because I wanted you to see how much you wanted to do it.
Wow.
And how I'm continuously trying to convince her. And I'm like, oh, this is going to be great because of this reason and that reason. And when she said that, I was just overwhelmed with relief. I start crying. She starts crying, and I'm like, "Oh, thank God, you're okay with this, because this would have been rough."
Yeah, what a heartbreak it would have been. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. What a test, And at the same time, It's like, come on, you couldn't just tell me straight up. I would have avoided all this, this what ifs and back and forths. That's awesome. So it brought you, to Storm, and Kris was there previous to you, correct?
Yes. Yeah. Kris had been, I'll let him share that, but I think he'd been working with them for about a year full time.
Absolutely.
And honestly, Kris was a big reason. Kris and I had met not long before then, when I had gone through the instructor level course at Gustavus, right, Chris?
Yeah.
Gustavus.
Yep.
Yeah, and um,
It was St.
we
Paul,
ended
and
up
then you had to leave, and then you came from.
yes,
Yes. Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
but we spent some time together at Gustavus. We
Yeah.
rolled, we had lunch, and we ended up kind of sharing our faith with one another and
Mm.
realizing that we're both believers. We prayed together, and Chris was such an awesome resource to look at it from a biblical perspective. Like, hey, how is this like practically in your life? And can you explain it to me from your perspective? And so having him as a resource, and also just the fact that Chris is basically my partner now,
Mm-hmm.
and having a fellow believer as a partner in any moment, just in his encouragement, being able to pray together, that was such a big deciding factor for me. Because I mean, I didn't think I could go wrong being close and in fellowship with another believer.
It's almost like it's another way of God saying, "Yeah, this is what I got for you. This is going to be your partner," and he's, it's almost like just stars aligning. Amazing. Yeah. What a great segue onto now, Chris. Now, Chaz, thank you so much for sharing, your side of it. Now, Chris, walk us through kind of your story a little bit and kind of what got you into Storm.
Yeah, for sure. So I grew up on the east side of St. Paul, so where Chaz worked for nearly 13 years as a law enforcement officer. So I grew up in St. Paul. I'm actually a pastor's kid, and so I've known the Lord for a long time. And then we went to school. I went to school and I was actually going to be a gym teacher. And my dad was like, "You know how much teachers make?" And I'm like, "No." And then he showed me, and I was like, "Oh, let me switch my major." And so I actually switched my major to pharmacy, pre-pharm. And so I shadowed one of my uncles who was a pharmacist, and I was like, "Dude, I can't do this. I can't do this." And so one of my buddies at my college was working security there, and he's like, "Hey, you should work here. You should be a security guard. You should join the police reserves at this the local city." And I was like, "All right, cool." So I did it. Loved it. I loved that. I wasn't stuck in an office all day long. My office was mobile. Um, you know, got to do a bunch of cool stuff like shooting and all of that cool stuff. And so I'm like, yeah, this is what I want to do. And so I did it. I still managed to graduate in 4.5 years, so that was pretty cool. But my first job was with the Hennepin County Sheriff's Office. I worked there for 2 years. I left and I went to work in a suburb, city of Egan. I worked there for like eight-ish years. And so total of like 10-ish law enforcement years. And then in 2024, yeah, so 2024. So I had already been working with Storm for a long time. I started training jiu-jitsu in 2018. And so that's where I met Tom and Chad. I still remember when Chad approached me. Chad was like, "Hey, come here." I was like, "What's up?" He's like, "Hey, would you like to work with us like part-time?" I was like, "Yeah, heck yeah, teach jiu-jitsu. That's the dream." So I did it. Yeah, so I did that for a while, and then just working part-time whenever they called. I was just like, "Yeah, I'll do it." And then in 2024, I still remember it. I was working out. So we can work out on duty. And so I'm working out on duty, and I get this text message from Tom and Chad. He's like, "Hey, would you like to join us full time?" He's like, "You don't have to answer this right now, but we'll set up a meeting and we'll have a chat and see how you like." And I remember I couldn't work out anymore because I was just staring at that phone. And this was just right after the riots. And so my wife had been praying a long time. She's like, I don't know if I can see you doing law enforcement for 30 years. And I'm just like, I don't know what else to do. I'm just a dumb cop. Like
Right.
I can't do anything else. I just gotta this is all I know how to do. Like, what am I gonna do? IT? What am I gonna do? Go back to school and be a pharmacist? I was like, I don't want to do that. And at the time I've already had 3 kids, And so I'm like, honey, this is a safe and secure job. Like like I'm getting a paycheck every 2 weeks. I don't know how I could leave. We've established a certain lifestyle already, and I'm like, I don't know if I can do this. And so she's just been praying. And when I got that text message, I remember I screenshot it and I sent it to my wife, and my wife's just like, "What does this mean? Are you done? Are you done? Are you done?" I'm like, "Oh, calm down, like you gotta relax. I gotta figure out what is actually going on here." But she
Completely
knew
opposite
right away.
reaction.
Yeah, the exact opposite. She's like, you're leaving tonight. You're
Wow.
you're turning in your resignation. You're done. And so I was like, well, let's pray on this. All right, let's just pray on this. And so,
Mm.
but deep down, I knew I was leaving, and so I talked with Tom and Chad, and I was the first guy to join Storm full time, and and so I was like, how is this gonna work? Like, and they were honest with me, and they're just like, we don't know, like we don't know, but we do know that we need a full time guy. And so
Hmm.
I was just like, sweet. And so we figured out some stuff, and um, they offered me a full time gig, and I accepted, and I left on good terms with the city of Egan. And then I've been working full time for Storm since, and I love it. The job itself, I can go back to it if I wanted to, um, but I love what I do. I feel like I have a bigger impact with the hundreds and if not close to thousands of agencies that we've connected with at this point. I just feel like the reach of actually making an impact in law enforcement and the people who serve those communities is way more than I could have ever done
Hmm.
at my agency. It's so
Hmm.
I was like, no, let's do it. I took a huge leap of faith, like we had already mentioned earlier. Everything is secure in terms of like as secure as you can get. Right? You got your pension, you got your job, you got health benefits, you got all sorts of benefits. And for me to leave all of that. I remember I had a lot of people, especially older officers who were near retirement. They're like, "Why would you leave such a safe and secure job? You got this pension, you got this, you got kids. Are you really going to do this?" And I remember talking to my wife, and I'm like, "Do we really trust in this system, or do we put our hope and faith in the Lord?"
Mm.
And so for us, it was like, no, this is me putting my trust in the Lord, not in myself. And so we were like, you know what? The Lord's called us to do this. We're going to do this. And so we made that leap of faith, and there's no turning back. Like, I don't regret my decision at all. I know a lot of people talk to me. They're like, hey, do you miss the job at all? And I'm like, nope. I remember the first time somebody asked me that, I just looked at it, I was like, nope, I don't miss the job. I miss the people. Like
Mm.
that's typically what people say. But in all honesty, like I talk to cops all day, every day, because that's my job. And so I don't even like I don't miss really anything about the job. I'm very blessed to be in this position, to be part of this company and part of this mission. And so that's just a little bit about me. So
I love that. Going way back to the beginning of your story, you mentioned that you're a pastor's kid, and I just got to ask, because you hear
yeah.
sometimes there's that stereotype, oh, you're a pastor's kid. Sometimes they want to rebel or act out. Did you ever have any moments of, my dad's a pastor, I'm getting overwhelmed with this, I don't want to be in this, want to do this, I'm going to go and do my own thing, or
Yeah.
were you fully in on it?
Um. Well, I'm firstborn generation here. So my parents fully believed in the rod of righteousness, and so that kept us in line pretty good. Um, Obviously, there's things that you do as a kid and even as an adult that is not in line with what the Word of God says, and
Right.
that's just maturity.
Mm-hmm.
My lack of maturity in my faith. And so it wasn't until after college where like I really stood more firm in my faith. And so it was never a doubt. Like every time I did something, um, every time I went to like a college party or anything like that, in the back of my mind, it was always like my dad's voice, like, "You really want to do this right now?" And
Mm,
so that always kept me in line because I love my parents and they did a great job of raising me and my three other siblings, and so it's just the grace of God that all four of us are God fearing and God loving children,
mm,
and so very blessed to have parents who really cared and were in my life. I never really felt the weight or pressure of being a pastor's kid. I don't know if that had anything to do with like being firstborn generation here and not like picking up on like cultural norms of being a pastor's
sure.
kid. We I at least for me, I never felt that. And so anytime somebody was like, "Hey, you're a pastor's kid, you got to be like the worst kid," I'm like, "No, I'm afraid of what's gonna happen if I do something. I go home like I have consequences. Like it's not. I don't. What are you talking about? If anything, like
Right.
I'm gonna get a whooping if I go home and they find out that I did this and this. And so
Mm,
I guess like I never again I think it's just a cultural thing. Being firstborn here, firstborn generation here, and not knowing like the cultural norm of being a pastor's kid.
right. And on that same lane of faith, had you, being a father myself, my son just turned 1 2 days ago, and so I'm
Awesome.
always constantly learning to make sure.
Congratulations.
Hey, yeah, thank you. It was very special.
Mhm.
But obviously with the way the world is today and all these different things, there's this pressure of, am I doing enough? Can I do enough to make sure that he goes on the path to be a great man, a great man of faith and a lover of God? As your father was a pastor, do you feel any pressure of making sure that you can convey that same message to your kiddos, or is there a certain, have you guys had those fears or those doubts or worries, and how have you adapted? Because I think you both have younger kids at this point.
Mhm. Yeah, I think the biggest impact my dad had on me was he was a real man of faith, and I saw him reading his Bible every day,
Mm,
and I saw him praying every day, and so I knew how serious it was for him. And so what I try to emulate is that same exact thing. Is
mm-hmm.
I want us I want my kids to see how serious I am with my faith, um, by letting them see me read my Bible. Yeah, sometimes like they interrupt my daily devotion and Bible reading, but at the end of the day, what they're seeing me doing is I'm taking my faith seriously. And so just doing that and raising kids according to what the Lord has told us, according to His
Mm-hmm.
Word.
Absolutely. Chaz, you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, just echoing Chris, but yeah, I can see how that would be a huge fear. I guess words of encouragement I would offer to fathers and mothers that are believers is God gives us very clear instructions and commands on how we're supposed to raise our children, um, and being faithful to that, presenting them with the gospel, spending ample time in the Word and in prayer with them. Um, I mean, Scripture says that God is going to save whom He's going to save, and if we raise up our children in the discipline and instruction of the Lord, um, and we teach them the way that they ought to go, God promises us they won't depart from that. And
Mm,
I trust His plan. I trust His plan for my children's lives. And all I can really do is be faithful in the moments that He gives me.
mm.
And I trust in Him and that He will care for my children. And all I can do is just try to be faithful in each and every moment that I have with my kids.
Mm. Amen. And what a correlation. As you guys are saying that, it brought me back to the defensive tactics portion of it, where you can teach that verbal de-escalation. You can teach the words that that people should say, but it's more important to show them the action and do the action, showing them the moves of, oh, this is how we do this in this situation. And when you're living it out, when you're being that example, it takes so much pressure off of your back of, okay, what do I have to say, or how do I act in this situation, when you're just being faithful and doing that, they see that and they go, man, I really love my dad. He's a superhero to me, and what makes him that? And if he reads his Bible, he prays with us, he spends time with us, he loves us. Like, what an example that is. And not only as a father, but out in the world, interacting with people in your capacities that you're in, like you're walking it, you're walking the walk, you're not just talking it. And people go, what does that guy have? He's really cool. He's fun to be around. And that's kind of like, when I'm looking for people to get on the podcast, it's like, I really like what that guy's got. What is it? Because I want it, and I want to talk with him about it. So it's super encouraging to hear you guys say all those things and how it correlates to what you actually do and how you live your lives. Even being around you just for that week, you could tell there was just something different about you guys, something special about you guys. And I think that deep down, it was just your faith living out, just being that person and exercising, what it is to be a man of God. And so I appreciate the insight on that, and for sure the encouragement and the advice, because watching my little man start to run around now, it's like, oh boy, here we go.
The one thing that really stands out to me in that, just everything you just said, Bailey, is I would hope that my children, when they think of me and they see me, that my goal is that they don't see me, that they see Christ through me, and that it's not of my strength, it's not of my my work, it is of His grace, and it is of Christ alone. And so it is a light that I hope shines through me, but it's not my light. It's Him and Him alone, because apart from Him, that this was not me. Very different person before God saved me. And so I would hope that my children would not see Dad as a superhero. They would see Dad just the way any human being is, fallen and in need of a Savior. And that through my actions and my words and my love for them, that they would see Christ, and they would know that's God's grace. That's not Dad. That's God's strength and His light living through him.
Wow. And what a way too, for if you do fall or fail, or they do, they fall or fail or mess up, they have that grace they can lean on as well. Dad's not a superhero. I do my very best. But at the end of the day, we try our best, and God still loves us. He still cares for us. We just gotta keep trying. Get the dust off and do it again. God's got us. Like, what a freeing feeling that is. Just so much pressure lifted off, knowing that you can just live and walk in the joy that God has for us. But yeah, oh man, that was awesome. Moving forward, something I just wanted to, kind of pick your guys' brains on just a little bit, and you both had touched on it, was, the riots that were going on not that long ago in Minneapolis. And we don't have to get deep into like the political sides of it or anything, but what was it like, working those? And were there, thoughts of like, why am I here? What did I get myself into? And, times of, I guess, leaning on your family and your faith, because Kris, you mentioned, your wife was with all this stuff going on, and so maybe this isn't what we should be doing, and obviously there's a lot of fear around it, but not wanting to let down your fellow partners and, leaving as well. But, can you guys just kind of walk me through that, what it was like to work during those times down there?
Yeah, I can go first, because Chaz has way more experience. I'm just a suburban cop, but it didn't affect us as much as it did like St. Paul or Minneapolis, but definitely the ripple effects of like everything floating out to the, anything that happens in the city always floats out to the suburbs. And so we had some stuff going on too, but we were, in terms of like where I was at, we were more in an assist role with St. Paul. And so we would actually go to St. Paul and assist them with like riot control details and things like that. They were always so gracious to place us in a very nice spot, because I think it was just part of the thing where it's their city, they're going to handle the main things. And we were more in a support role. The things that you saw, the things that people did, I think that's like a once in a career type of deal. And then as a person who actually grew up in St. Paul, to see the city burning, you could smell the buildings burning. You can smell everything. You can see everything. It was kind of heartbreaking to see that happening, and to see how how low some people can get. It was very disheartening. But again, I just put my trust in the Lord. Um, and so for me, we were just more in a support role for St. Paul officers and Minneapolis officers.
Chaz.
I was actually working um, one of the brief stints that I worked in the Western District and on the day shift. So right when everything began and the civil unrest began in St. Paul, I responded to the first call of looting at the Target there at Midway. Um, Me and I think it was like three or four other officers were able to clear a very small group out of the Target and shut it down. And by the time we had come outside of those doors, a large crowd had started to form in the parking lot. And, you know, we didn't necessarily have all the equipment that we needed. And it's four or five of us, if that. And we're kind of in a holding pattern because it was very clear that the intention was to enter the store and loot, because that was kind of what the common theme of the day had been. And it was the call we were responding to. So a lot of those people were in the parking lot. And so it was quite a while before we got some resources. I'll never forget, vastly outnumbered, and a DNR truck pulls up, a pickup truck, and parks right next to us. And he's like, "Hey, if things get bad enough, hop in the truck. We're going to go." And I'm like, okay, okay.
Wow.
But we ended up getting some resources there, and it was, it was pretty wild. I'd never seen anything like that. We had multiple kind of civil unrests and occupations and protests and things like that had happened in conjunction with a lot of different incidents in St. Paul. But that one was pretty unprecedented. And having been like right in the middle of it, where you're seeing fire, you're seeing buildings, you're hearing explosions, the radio is nonstop, and the crowd of people just continues to grow. I'll never forget when it started. The Pawn America had hundreds of people running in and out with things, and I'm in my squad, and we're trying to figure out where we're best suited to be. And I have another car next to me, and somebody walking on the street's like, "Hey, aren't you guys going to do something?" And I'm like, "There's two of us. I don't know what we're going to do.
Right.
We need help,
Wow.
And so we finally ended up getting some resources there. And that was a difficult day. A lot of fear and anger and division, and, emotions were really high. And just on a personal level, that was kind of one of the, like, I was not a Bible believing Christian at that point. And at the same time this was all happening, my personal life was falling apart. And so I think, looking back on it, I think God put me in a position where I was just, all of these things piling together broke me to the point of putting my trust in Christ and becoming a believer. And that happened in April of 2021. And I met my wife very shortly after, and she had just become a believer as well. So we had, after all this had happened, I can see how God was working it all for my good and to bring me to him, and to just rescue me. And since then we've been able to build this family. So I can't look back on it and think of it as something necessarily horrible, because it's something that God used for good in my life. And I think that's a good way for cops, especially that are believers, to see horrible things, right? When you experience these really difficult and horrible calls or incidents, that trusting that we don't have the complete picture, and that the Bible tells us and Scripture reveals that God works all things together for good for those that love him and are called according to his purpose.
Wow. Yeah, what a story. To be able to look back on that and not have it be a dark time in your life, but seeing the light shine through the crack of that dark time and going, wow, something really beautiful did come out of that. So it's hard to be upset about it or, look back on it and think, oh man, that sucked. But it's, it's like any adversity we go through and how inspiring it is. I was just talking to a friend the other day, like, he's got a lot of stuff together, and everything's going great. I'm like, man, God is good. You're awesome, and I really look up to you. And he's like, well, I'm not a superhero. I have everything. Everything's going on just like any other person. And I was like, well, that's what makes you so, inspiring. So wanting to follow is because you are a man, and you do fall. You celebrate, and you celebrate and find joy in the wins, but also in the defeats and the adversity and the trials. You find a way to find the good in it and pull yourself up. Like, that is something that every single person can relate to in some capacity, dealing with adversity and finding a way to find the good in it and rising from it. It's, and that's honestly what Iron Purpose is about. Iron sharpening iron. Learning from other people and their adversities that they've gone through, and seeing what God has done through their stories and brought them out of. So that's amazing. I appreciate you both sharing your stories and perspectives on a really dark time, and how you were able to see the light in it as well. That's awesome. So now moving forward, as we're kind of wrapping up, we'll just talk about Storm just a little bit. You can explain maybe a little bit more in depth about what you guys do, and what Storm is all about, and maybe how they can find different trainings if they're law enforcement, or maybe what you would do to encourage people who aren't in law enforcement. I know we kind of talked about that a little bit already, but if you just want to kind of give a little spiel of what Storm is, and we'll kind of go from there.
The whole purpose behind Storm, the reason why it was formed in the first place, was there was a demand for it. This training had gotten rolled out in St. Paul, and the outcomes that were coming from it in the field were amazing. The statistics are just something that has never been seen in law enforcement history. And in conjunction with that, the culture of law enforcement in the St. Paul Police Department changed, specifically around training. But we had gone from a very standard defensive tactics model in the St. Paul Police Department, a lot of strikes and pressure points and things like that. And one of the big kind of culture shifts, specifically in regards to the defensive tactics training, was like what we learned in the academy. We would typically go out on the street and we wouldn't see a lot of success. We would try to implement these techniques and these moves, and we would either get injured. We would have a heck of a time controlling people if we were able to control them at all. Officers weren't working as a team because we weren't really taught a lot of team tactics. And so just not great all around. So there was definitely a need for it. And Tom, the owners of the company, Tom and Chad, in conjunction with Sean, were in the training unit at the time and put their heads together, and their respective backgrounds in combat sports, and Chad with training thousands of soldiers in the military and combatives, and Sean's experience in jiu-jitsu and very high-level boxing. They put their heads together and they created this curriculum from within the department and actually implemented it. And I always bring this up because it's a unique unique position for them to be in, right? Because they can see firsthand what kind of mistakes that people typically make in defensive tactics training. And I'll give you an example. Teaching like an overly complicated technique where, like, from an experienced martial artist perspective, like a really basic technique, but a technique that you have to train consistently. And the specific example that I think of is like a Kimura lock, which is just like a figure 4 arm lock. It's a really basic, like, you'll learn it your first week if you go to jiu-jitsu school. So they implemented that. They thought that was a great technique, and they were able to implement that into a police academy. And from what I hear, these guys could do it in their sleep. They were doing it under resistance during scenarios. They were doing it over and over every single day, thousands and thousands of reps. And eventually they graduated from the police academy. They go out and they go through the FTO process, and it's limited training. Not all departments have consistent defensive tactics training. So they come back months later, this group of like 50 that learned this specific technique, and they come back months later and not a single one of them remembered how to do it because they weren't training consistently. So that's kind of the uniqueness of it, where they can see, like, well, that's not something that people are going to be able to remember if they're not training consistently. And yet we've devoted hours and hours and hours and sweat equity and all of that into teaching them this technique, and it's not being utilized in real world scenarios, and they can't even remember it months later when they come back for a refresher course. So maybe that's a technique that is a little bit more complicated that shouldn't necessarily be taught in this curriculum because you only have a set amount of training and time. So they were able to identify the simplest concepts and techniques that can be retained months and months and months in advance, so that when you're tired, when you just got done working, an overtime shift, and you're in a fight in a dark alley with somebody, like that stuff is just going to be second nature to you, and you're going to be able to defend yourself. You're going to be able to do it reasonably and necessary, and you're going to be able to control that person. And so they were able to make those mistakes on the front end and see exactly what works and put together this incredible curriculum and incredible system of training. And to add on to that, the way the training is delivered is so important too. Historically, we saw a lot of trainings where the instructors weren't as invested in I'm going to try to say this nicely, weren't as invested in the students as necessarily they were invested in themselves. And I believe very passionately that people don't really care about what you have to say or what you're going to teach them unless they know that you care about them. And so they learned how to deliver the training in a way that was very genuine and authentic, that this is not about showing you how tough we are or how great we are or how knowledgeable we are. This is about making you better and preparing you and giving you the confidence. And I mean, when I went through the police academy, it was a lot of yelling. There was a lot of demeaning. There was a lot of punishment, and exercise and PT and stuff. That's all well and good, but it has to come from a place of love,
for sure.
And I feel like they've really accomplished building this culture at Storm where people know that we are genuinely invested in them and that we genuinely care about them, because it's absolutely true.
Yeah, and I would agree. Being a student of you guys, getting the opportunity to learn from you guys, like the quote you touched on it. They don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. Like that's spot on. Like if you don't care, or if they think that you don't care, they're not gonna put any time or effort into it. And then also touching on what you said about being in a dark alley and something happens, and all of a sudden you revert to your training. It's being your best when your best is required, because we don't know when that's going to happen. We don't know when life's going to throw us a curveball or try to crush us or whatever the situation may be. And having those reps and learning how to do those reps and keeping it simple so where you can learn them too is important, because you never know when that time is going to come to where you're going to need it. But amazing. Yeah, that was a awesome explanation about what Storm is. One kind of final question for both of you as we kind of wrap up here, and it's a question that I ask all my guests, and we've kind of touched on it a little bit with faith and with getting involved in the gym and jiu-jitsu, mixed martial arts and stuff. But in a career that has been so demanding for everything that you have in your cup, you're continually pouring out to people and different things, and you got to come home and pour out to your wife and your kids, and you're constantly pouring out. What do you guys both do to make sure that your cup is staying full? Or what do you do to make sure you're staying sharp so that you can help sharpen other people around you?
It's not by my might. It's not by my strength. Everything that I do, I draw on the Lord. So it's not my strength. Because if it's just me, I'm going to fail. If it's just me, I'm going to be tired. If it's just me, it's not going to go well. And so I always just draw my strength from the Lord. He's my provider. He's my strength. And so he provides for it all. And so I'm just a vessel for him to use. And so it's not even necessarily like, hey, I need to fill my cup. It's just the Lord's just going to use me how he's going to use me. And I just have to be a faithful servant. That's it. Like I don't. There are days where I'm tired and I come home, and every dad experiences this, but it's just, if I just do it on my own, then I'm going to be a cranky dad. I'm going to be a grumpy husband. And so I just really go back to my faith and my trust in the Lord. Because it's not me doing all this. It's not my power doing this. It's just the Lord. And so I would encourage people, if you're feeling tired, you're feeling worn down, don't do it on your own. It's not you. Trust in the Lord, and He's going to provide. It's not about what you can do as a man. It's what the Lord is going to use you for.
Kris absolutely hit on it perfectly, right? It's not by my own effort or strength, but by God's grace, right, that I even draw breath. And so from a practical perspective, I think of it like a stewardship, where scripture says our bodies are a gift from God, and our mind needs to be renewed by his word. So I try to grow in physical areas, mental areas, and spiritual areas with that in mind, that my body, my mind, the breath that I draw when I wake up, even really difficult challenges that present themselves, they're gifts. And I might not be able to understand it at that moment, why it's a gift and why it is good, but I trust in him. And I see him as sovereign and in control of my life and of the universe. And I know that God plays an active role in my life and everyone's life. And so I try to train hard and continue to learn and spend time in scripture and prayer. And I mean, the Lord provides, everything that I need. It seems that every moment I've had where I feel like we're going to fall short on paying bills, or maybe I don't have the energy, or I don't think that I can, God gives me exactly what I need. Right? Like when we had 2 kids, like, oh man, I feel like, I don't know if we're going to have another kid. And then we had 3 and God gave us exactly what we needed for 3. And so it's like, no matter what's placed in our path, he's in control of it all, and he's going to take care of you regardless. And Kris had said something earlier that I will never forget. And it was one of the things that gave me so much peace when I left the police department and joined Storm, is that, and he had already said this, where was I trusting in myself to care for my family so much, and in my own effort, where it's like, I have to have all these benefits, and I have to have this specific health insurance, and, all these things need to be aligned, or was I putting my trust in God? And to step away from that and to do what I'm doing now, it's almost like my life is reflecting more of a complete trust in him. Because really all those things, they're all well and good from a worldly perspective, but like, what good is my pension if I get hit by a bus tomorrow?
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
And I don't know what I mean? I don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
So I trust in him that he places things in my path. And it's not necessarily about like what direction I choose to go. It's just more knowing that no matter what is happening, this is his will and his way, because I can't go against that. He's in control. So I just continue to operate as faithfully as I possibly can, as a fallen person, but again, drawing on God's strength and through Christ, and not trusting in myself, not trusting in my circumstances to dictate my joy and how I treat people and how I view the world and how I handle conflict, but relying on him and him entirely.
Wow. Is it Sunday morning? I thought it was Thursday. I didn't know we were at church. Jeez, guys.
Can I get a hallelujah?
Amen.
Yeah.
Let's go. Man, what a beautiful answer. It's from both of you. It's, it kind of reminded me of the old hymn, because he lives. Because he lives, I can face tomorrow. And, he is the well that will never run dry. So as you were saying that, I was picturing myself holding this empty cup, exhausted, grumpy dad, like you said, crabby husband, and, well, if my cup's dry, I'm just going to walk over to this everlasting well, and here we go. Let's go. We're going to pour out again, and I can just keep pouring out from that one. It doesn't come from me. It's not my doing. I'm just transferring, using my body, using my abilities as a vessel to carry what God has for me. So, wow. Yeah, that's amazing, guys. I really appreciate your perspective on that, and your perspective on law enforcement, and your stories of faith and resilience through adversity, and with these new challenges and your leaps of faith. Like, it's all stuff that I've been able to relate to, and I hope that other people are able to as well. And I say this with a lot of my podcasts. Even if nobody listens to this, I had a heck of a time, talking with you guys and learning from you guys. And I'm very much looking forward to the next time that I get to be able to be a part of one of your classes, because I know for sure, without a doubt, it's going to happen again. So thank you guys so much again for taking the time to come on here, share your stories, and hang out for a little bit. I know you're very busy. You got a lot going on, especially with families and work and stuff. So it truly means a lot for you to hop on here.
Can I share one piece of encouragement to you, Bailey?
Yes, please.
Thank you so much for having us and for doing this. I remembered when I had seen this, I just came across it. I think it was like maybe TikTok or something. And I saw it was you, and it was just so happens it was the week that we were in class together. And I went up and I thanked you for this. And it's a similar perspective to what we have with training, where it's what you're doing if it presents the gospel, if it encourages a fellow believer, and if it affects one person in a positive way, that's worth it, man. Worth it. So it's not how many people see it, it's the quality in which you're delivering it. And one soul and one fellow believer and one person is worth the effort beyond what I think we comprehend at this moment. So thank you for doing what you're doing.
Wow, that means a lot. I'm getting goosebumps. Don't make me cry on my own show, Chaz.
Oh, sorry, buddy.
He makes me cry every time we train together, so it's okay.
Hopefully tears of joy. You guys are awesome.